Hello and welcome to IOV Quick Tips. My name is Chris North and today I shall be looking at cabling for lavalier microphones, and in particular how we can reduce cable noise and how we can avoid those terrible cracks and pops from loose-fitting 3.5mm jack plugs. Now, as I explained in a previous session, the first thing I do with a lapel mic with a tight lip is to put the cable into a loop through the tight lip holder itself so that it provides some sort of strain relief against pulling the cable at the bottom of the microphone and makes it secure. But there are other things you can do. You can also make a broadcast loop, which is just taking the microphone cable, twisting it into a circle, and then using a piece of sticky tape to stick that together in a loop. But use the sticky tape the wrong way round, as it were, with the sticky on the outside, and don't make it too tight, just enough to hold the cable together in a circular loop. Now, the advantage of that is that if somebody pulls the cable at the bottom end, then it doesn't pull the microphone, it just reduces the size of the loop. So that's a very good way of stopping microphones getting pulled out of place. That loop, of course, goes under the shirt or under the clothing. So if anybody pulls on it, then it just pulls the loop down without pulling the microphone. Now, we often use an extension cable with the lavalier microphone, and in order to make sure that that doesn't pull the microphone out of place and cause a problem, it needs to be anchored to some part of the presenter's body. I found that the best way to do this is to use a tight lip spring clip which has a little circular spring holder, but instead of putting the microphone in there, I put that around the flying socket on the end of the extension cable. That holds very tightly. You can then clip that to a belt or to a pocket, or indeed to the bottom part of a shirt or blouse just out of shot. I'll just put this one in shot so you can see it. So if the microphone cable were into that, and any pulling on that wouldn't pull the microphone cable. So that's a really good way of stopping your microphones being pulled out of place and getting damaged. Now, a very annoying thing with the 3.5mm jack connection system, which a lot of lavalier microphones have, is that the jack plug wiggles about in the socket and produces loud crackling noises which totally ruin your recording. So one thing you can do to minimise that is when you've connected them together as firmly as possible, use a piece of very wide sticky tape and stick the plug and the socket together. You have to pull it really tight, and it really only works if you have very wide sticky tape to pull it down with. Pull that really, really tight so that there can be no movement between the two whatsoever, and bind it through. You can, of course, take the sticky tape off when you've finished, so it doesn't ruin the system, but that will mean that the plug and socket are firmly together and you don't get the crackle. But by far a better way to do that, and a more professional way, is to buy microphone systems which have the Sennheiser type locking collar on the jack plug, so that that can lock into any extension cable and some equipment as well. So when they go together, the collar spins round and tightens up on the screw thread so that the plug and the socket can't move at all, and there is no risk of having crackles on your recording. Now, we also get crackles from the jack socket where the jack plug fits into the socket in your equipment, and it's important to make sure that doesn't happen. One thing you can do is to take a loop in the cable and tie it back to the camera handle or to some solid part of the recorder so that any tension on the cable is not going to be transferred to the jack plug and socket. But if you can't do that easily, quite a simple solution is to use one of these tiny plastic cable clips which come on cards of about 10 or 12, and you can fix that to any equipment of any size with its sticky pad, so that when you plug in your microphone or other cable, then that will then be placed through the clip itself, and any tension on the cable is not going to be transferred to the microphone plug and the socket, so you won't get crackles. Now, if you have one of these inexpensive microphone transmitters which doesn't have a screw collar on the socket, then what you can do is to put a rubber band around it and tether the microphone cable under the rubber band. So when it's plugged in, the rubber band would hold the cable tightly to it so that any tension on the cable will not transfer to the socket and cause crackles. The trouble with that, though, is that the 2.4 GHz system can cause interference to the cable, which can act as an aerial if the cable isn't well shielded. So if you do have that problem, then the thing to do is to use an extension cable that is well shielded, where it goes into the transmitter itself. Again, tether that under the rubber band and put your microphone into the other end. And so if you keep the transmitter on one side of your body, say on your belt, and have the microphone cable coming down the other side of your body, then you can keep the transmitter and the microphone cable apart so that you won't get interference. Well, I hope you've found these tips and suggestions useful. If you have, let us know, and also tell us about anything that you've found that is useful in recording audio for video so that we can pass on your tips to other people as well. Next time I shall be looking at microphone capsules for Lavalier mics, their different characteristics, and how we can use them to best effect. So I hope you'll join us then. Goodbye.